Good morning. How's it going, everybody? I see some faces that I remember, some faces that I haven't met yet. So, hello to everybody. I'm Amir. I run a little team called the Local Home Finder team here behind me, and we're expanding every day. We're doing different fun things, and so there's a lot of things that I am not good at. There's one thing that I am good at is winning listings. So my background is has always been in sales since I can remember. I used to work at a retail store called Future Shop, and I used to sell electronics, and it's number one in Canada for quite a long time. And anybody that ever worked at Future Shop will likely still remember. Um, but there's a few things that I learned there, and one of those things was how to read people and how to get the most out of the sale and also get them to where they want to go to. And that's I think one of the most important skills that I picked up. So the way I would sort of want to run this is that I want to make it as interactive as possible so everybody gets something out of it. And so I have the presentation. It's very simple, very straightforward, but I want to go through some of the more nitty gritty things, if that's okay. Uh, Obviously, we know a lot of the basics, but I'll go through some of the simple stuff anyway. When you go to a listing appointment, and I'm not just talking like, you know, your cousin calls you to list a house, or your uncle or a friend that says, just come list this house. I'm talking the ones where the sun and the moon aligned and the coyote crossed the tree three times and you're getting an awesome listing and
Okay.
you really want to land it. And it has, two other people that are interested in getting that same listing and you're in competition with other people. Oh, there we go. Awesome.
Perfect.
Yeah, so the ones that you really, really want to get, and it's imperative that you close that deal. And it's sort of like going to a job interview. And when you go to a job interview, if you're not prepped for it, you're not going to get that job. And if you haven't done your research, if you're not qualified, you're likely going to stumble. So you want to have as much behind you as possible to push you to grab that listing. So that will make a big difference when you're actually in front of the client, and they'll be able to sort of smell that and sense that you really know what you're doing or you don't. So you want to show up with as much research as possible on the property. So let's start off with the first slide there. Okay. So, market research and competitive market analysis. So, you obviously want to do some market research. You want to do a CMA on the property. As you do the CMA, you're going to see what's sold for how much, but that's not what I'm talking about. Um, this is likely a scenario where you want to know a lot of these properties inside and out. And if
So
most of the clients do
try.
pretty, can you hear me? I think somebody's echoing there. But if the average consumer that you're going to be visiting is, within under 70 years old, they're likely have the internet and they're going to be researching and they're going to be looking out there to see what's going on. So you have a basic idea. So you obviously want to do your CMA. But if there are properties that are currently on the market and you're not serving that market as vigorously as maybe you would like, you want to go and visit some of those properties and see what those similar properties look like, because you might be comparing it to a property that isn't exactly the same, might sort of look awesome in pictures, but it doesn't look as good as that client's. So when we say market research, I mean really getting down into nitty gritty and knowing exactly what you're looking at, and that will impress a client once you're in front of them. And you can tell them, hey, before I came here, I went to this property to research that for you. You don't have to exaggerate it. You can kind of just explain that you're prepping for this. So we'll go to the next slide. There we go. Okay. So obviously you want to make sure that when you get into their house, you're not right away you're just kind of observing everything. And one of the big things I learned when I was working retail is that people they don't want to be sold anything. They want to know that there's an advocate by their side that they can trust. So really, when you're entering the door, everything's lined up for you to be in competition with a couple other agents to get an audience with this client who wants to sell their property. They know that you have the basic skills to sell it, and we're going to go through some of that stuff, but they really want to get to know you and you as a human being. So you really want to make sure that you connect with them. So some of the things that I do, and I'm going to go off script here. I actually researched the client as well. So obviously we researched the crap out of their property, but we also want to look at the competition, but we look at the client as well. So a lot of times I'll Google people and I'll look them up and see what they do, where they live, if they have kids, and to really get to know who I'm gonna be there. So visiting, and who I'm gonna be face to face with. So when you actually see their face and you see them on Facebook, and you kind of go through their life, you feel like you almost know them, so you can relate with them on a whole nother level. It's a little creepy, but you got to do your research. Yeah, I feel like you should. All right, next slide. And your marketing plan. So a lot of folks they're gonna ask you, what are you gonna do to sell my property? So you guys obviously have a robust way of advertising properties with the JJ team, but you know, no matter what you do, you want to be ready to explain how that works. And everybody does your basic stuff, but you want to let them know that you're going to get out there and you're going to door knock, and you're going to talk to all the neighbors, and you're going to get the word out there about their property. And uh, the next agent that comes in, they're going to sort of go through the same kind of spiel if they know what they're doing, but you want to really get into the nitty gritty on why you're doing each thing. So say if you're talking about door knocking and uh, going out there and talking to all the neighbors, you want to explain to them that a lot of folks might have somebody that they're related to, that they want to move into the neighborhood. So you're going to be getting the word out for that. You also want to talk about your digital marketing. You guys do a ton of digital marketing online. So you want to get behind that and talk about how the analytics work, how you know how many people have looked at it, so you can see no matter what market you're in, whether you're up or down, that there's actually still people looking at it, and you're able to assess data. And instead of going forward with your eyes closed, you can see what's going on in the back end, and you'll share that information with them. Another thing you want to talk to them about is that you're not going to forget about them. And a lot of times the clients are worried about you just getting the paperwork signed and then just leaving them alone. And so what I do is I guarantee my clients that I'm going to call them at least once a week. Whether there's information to share or not, we're going to have a conversation once a week to talk about if everything stayed the same, or if you had more showings, if you had less showings, if anything's happening to their property, or if they should be making some kind of a change, and we'll be making that change together. So that brings me to the next part. You can go to the next slide. Hopefully I got those lined up right. Okay. So as you've gathered all your relevant documents, you're going to go through a lot of the things that are related to the property. So you want to ask them a ton of questions about the property. So this goes through some of those things, but you want to talk about what's rented in the property. Do they have permits for that deck that they built in the back? When was their roof built? So as you have these questions prepared, you have 20 of them, and you go through all of them, they're going to realize that you're not there just to sell that house and go. You really care about their property and how it's going to sell and how it's going to present to the person that's going to be purchasing it, so you can put it in its best light. I guess we can go to the next slide there. I think I covered all that. There we go. Okay, so this is sort of backwards. This should have been first. So when we're building that rapport with the client, we want to talk about why it is that they want to sell, where they want to go. This is all part of getting to know them and sort of filling that need, instead of knowing that obviously the point is to sell the house and get them to the next one, or sell their house and they're gonna move out of the province or whatever it is. But really, you want to know what their purpose is, how that's going to affect their life, and be able to relate to them on a human level. I think that's probably the most important thing in building that rapport with them, is to find out why this change is happening, because it's a pretty massive change for somebody to sell their property, unless they're investors and they're buying and selling every day, which is not your biggest clientele. You want to know exactly what's happening in their life and where they're going next. Okay. So then you get into the CMA. So the CMA this is our CMA that we put out there. I'm sure you guys have a similar one. And it's sort of like your resume when you go in to sort of present yourself. And it doesn't need to be in a magazine form. It can sort of be put together just simply, kind of have this cover sheet. Thank you so much for allowing us to give you an idea of what your house is worth, and we this is what we do in terms of service. So ours is going to be available to everybody if anybody wants to see it, but it's sort of pretty simple. We have it in digital form, and we have it if you're presenting it online, or we like to print them. So I'll have a lot of these pages pre-printed, and we'll just add in a lot of documents afterwards. So it talks about me and kind of presents what we do, what we're going to be doing for them. A lot of folks don't read this stuff. They really want to get into the nitty gritty, but they might flip back to it later on to compare you to other agents. So it's a good idea to leave something like this behind to just at least be sort of compared to somebody else. And I'm sure you guys have a similar thing to leave for folks. So this goes through their property, the pictures of their property. Obviously, you know how the CMA works, and we get into the nitty gritty as much as possible. And so I sort of don't like to assume everything about people. Obviously you do your research about them on Facebook and get to know them as much as you can. But once you get in front of them, you don't know how analytical they're going to be. And so in terms of gauging them, you obviously building that rapport, you get an understanding on how engaged they are in it. And sometimes you'll have a couple where somebody's engaged, somebody else just doesn't care and they just want to list it and get it done with. And you engage with each of them in the way they want to be engaged. So if they want to go really into the nitty gritty of the numbers, you're going to have that here, and you don't need to memorize it. You have it in your head, which is great. But you also have it in this magazine, so you can go through it with them step by step on here's how many days a property spent on the market that is similar to yours. And hopefully you've visited that property, you've done a lot of your research. If the property is sold, maybe you called that agent and found out maybe some of the back end story about that property, and you can share that with them. The more insight you can share with them, the more confidence you're going to have from that client that they're going to be listing with you, and they're going to have trust in you. So been yapping for a little while. Does anybody have any questions?
Hey, Amir, I
Anything
have
so
a quick
far?
one. Good morning, it's Gary.
Hey, good morning.
I noticed in your CMA you have a lot of pictures. Is that of the subject property that you go out to?
So some of them are, so at the beginning is pictures of me doing different things.
Okay.
So we'll have some writing here. The pictures here for the first few pages. This is just like some of the stuff that we've done, some of the cool pictures we've taken. Some of them will be like pictures of me in action doing things like photos and things like that. And then you go into their property. So yes, I do. If there's really nice pictures of their property, I make it look really pretty like this.
So question, I'm getting to a point. So are you taking those pictures when you're there visiting the property to do an assessment, or is that possibly a prior listing? And reason I'm asking is we've done that in the past where I've included pictures from a prior listing that were still available. And the clients sometimes were sticky about it because they're like, well, my property doesn't look like that. And, we have to take an objection and handle it. So I'm just curious if you're using, like we did, recycled pictures or doing your own thing.
So it can be twofold. We won't go there and take pictures, but a lot of times we will pull from the internet if they look good. If they
Right.
don't look good, we'll leave them out. But even if they say, "Oh, the front of my house doesn't look like that anymore," that could be a point of compliment. You can say, "Hey, wow, you guys have done an amazing job in here. It really looks night and day difference." And that's why we want to come here and really see the property and get the real good sense of what it's going to sell for, because obviously you've done a lot of work here.
Oh,
So
thanks for,
yeah, no worries. Thanks for
that's
that.
what we've typically done because sometimes they remark, my property doesn't look like that at all anymore. So, what are you going to do about that? So
Yeah, and
a
and
good
so
ability to lead in. So thank you.
no worries. I try to be as not super agreeable all the time, but if there's something that I need to, disagree with them on, I disagree with them on it. But when it comes to their property, it's, I'm sure, close to their heart. And, that's what's going to get them tied down to you. So if they've put some, really a lot of pride of ownership into their property, then I'm going to concur with that and say, yeah, you guys have done an awesome job. Maybe it's not my taste, but it looks great. Any other questions before we go on? Awesome. Cool. So now that you've got their buy-in on you, hopefully, they're going to ask you questions automatically. If you're not getting a lot of those questions of like, what do you think we should do here? Or how would you market this? Or if you're not getting them engaged in it, they're not bought in on that, on if you're the right person or not. So at that point, you can start to assess, and let them ask you some questions and sort of open the floor up to them. And you don't want to kind of be rambling like me the entire time. You kind of want to have that back and forth with the client. So hopefully you've done everything right. And we're gonna, discuss some scenarios. If you guys have any questions, any objections you want to throw at me, I'd love to hear them. But once you've done that, they're going to ask you what you're going to be doing or what they should be doing to prepare the property. So in terms of staging and in terms of some of the cleaning and things like that, we offer cleaning included in our service. And we don't do minor repairs, but we do a recommendation list. So when our stager comes over, they'll make a list of things that should be done, and they'll do a visual check of things, and they'll give them a checklist. And we make sure in the email we say that this is a optional thing. If this is something that should be done, but if you just physically can't do it, let us know. We'll work together, figure it out. If it's just like basic things, we'll get it done for them. But if it's something major, obviously we kind of go as is. But in terms of staging, it depends. If it's a 1 or 2 rooms, we'll usually include that. If it's like a whole house stage, we'll get the client to pay for that. And there's a whole staging page in our market analysis that's included in that. So that's a whole upsell basically once you have that deal in the bag. So I wouldn't go into how much staging costs and things like that unless you have that buy-in from the client that they're gonna go with you. And so then once they start to open up about it, then you start to present these other things. Let's go to the next one. There we go. So in terms of marketing plan, obviously you want to give them the steering wheel. So you tell them that it's the first step of marketing is going to be the pre-marketing. So before you even list it, you're going to be talking to your network of realtors on that this listing is coming up, and then your sign is going to go up, and you're sort of going to talk them through the next steps of what your marketing plan is going to be to give them confidence that things are happening. And so as this stuff is happening, obviously they're not going to see that. So you're going to let them know that weekly we're going to talk about how that is going and how we implemented that and if it's getting any kind of results. Let's go to the next one. There we go. Okay, so the listing agreement process. So this can be sort of overwhelming for a lot of people because it's not like every day they sign listing agreements. And so you want to talk to them about every step of it. So you start out by, here's where you're going to be, here's where we agree on a handshake. And then what we'll do is we'll sit down together and we'll go through the paperwork. Ideally, you want to show up with the paperwork in paper, but also in digital if you're like that. I a lot of times use digital, so I'll have my administrator have things ready to fire it away, and I just let her know and she'll send it out and we can go through it with the client while we're there, because you don't want somebody else to show up and say, you know what, I'll do everything this other person did and I'll do it for 1% now. So, and so it's important to kind of close that deal while you're there, while the iron's hot. And I'm going to touch on some of the overcoming objections with the commission stuff afterwards, once we're done here. But it's important to sort of keep that while you have that rapport, while you're sitting together, really sit down and talk about every piece of that document and don't skip over any of it and really go deep into stuff. And you want to bring up a lot of the things that may be hot button issues for people, and you don't want to kind of weir around them. You want to get right into it because you're going to be their agent of choice and their professional partner. So it's important that you kind of shed light on everything, and that's going to contrast you to the other people that are going to likely show up if they don't sign with you that day.
Amir,
Yes.
do you go through the RICO information guide at that point?
Oh, yes. So we'll go through everything. So we obviously have to pivot a little bit in our presentation and how we did that. So we do go through that. Once we've sort of built the report, talked about the property, I tried to kind of give them a disclaimer. I was like, this is free advice, but I'm not representing you. However, this is what I would do. So I give them a quick disclaimer, and here's what I think of it. And then once we sit down and they're like, okay, well, let's look at the paperwork, I'll go through it from top to bottom. Usually it takes me a good half hour to go through everything. And that's a quick one. Some people want to sit there for, depending on how nitty gritty they are. Older folks like to sit there and go through it for a good hour, and we'll sit there and have a few coffees and go through all of it. I mean, you're not, selling a Yaris, right? So you might as well spend the time with the client.
Thanks.
All right. So this should have sort of been like number one. So I think with these slides sort of backwards, I apologize for that. But building rapport is probably your main purpose of this meeting. It's not saying like, I'm gonna build a thing just around you, a marketing plan. I have the best marketing plan. I am the best person for this job. They don't want to hear anything about you, period. They don't care. They care about what's going to happen to them and their property and how it's going to sell. And as long as you're filling that void inside of them that gives them all the warm and fuzzies, they're gonna go with you. And again, sometimes you have two different kinds of people. You have the analytical person and you have the warm and fuzzy person. So you may need to pivot to two different people, but as long as you're doing that, you're gonna get it. I hope that was helpful for the report part. Is there any more after this slide? I think we're all set here. Awesome.
Yep,
That was
the
it.
last one.
Perfect. Awesome. I just wanted to touch on one other thing, and sorry if I'm going over time here, SG.
Nope, we're still good. We still got a few
Cram
minutes.
it all into.
You're doing perfect.
Thanks. So I think what's super important here is, like I said, bring up those hot button issues, and you should bring up the commission thing instead of somebody else bringing it up. So I go in right off the bat once I have a rapport and they're asking me questions and they're engaged. I'll talk about the commission stuff. I'll say, hey, you're going to have people that are going to show up and are going to want to put up a sign and, take $500 from you and list it. But that's not selling a house. And again, I use that analogy of we're selling a house here. You could, for the same price, you could buy a few Ferraris. And, this is not something that you're going to do every day. So why entrust it with somebody that's going to just come in, put up a sign and leave? And then I started going to, here's what I do, and here's how we are different. And so some people, though, will come right off the bat, even on the phone before you get there, and start talking about commission and saying like, hey, I want to list this house. What's your commission? All right. So we're obviously talking past that into the presentation, but what I generally do is and say, hey, listen, if I get you what you want for this house, would you be comfortable paying me what I'm worth? So, I mean, that's a no-brainer, And so I explained to them that it's a point of pride for me to get top dollar for this house, and it's really important for you as well to make sure that you don't leave a penny here on the table, and I'm going to make sure you do that. So once we've sort of slowed that down, I haven't really gone into commission in any way. In some occasions, I have reduced commission by say 0.5 because somebody else was offering the same service. Maybe they were desperate, and that's sort of my cue to kind of squish that competition down just a little bit, And so, that's really as far as I've gone. But with the services that we offer, nobody's going to be able to beat that at 2.5. But I know that, and I can go into a listing presentation confident nobody else can do what I do at this rate. Plus, I've connected with them on a emotional level, and so putting all that together, it's sort of a no-brainer for them. So it is super, super rare that I get in front of a client and I don't get that listing. And if I didn't get it, I will call them and say, hey, congratulations. I know you're listing with something or so and so or Property Brothers or whatever. Is there something I could have done different that would have won your business? And so in the past, I've actually gotten listings afterwards, after they dropped Property Brothers and they came back to me. So it's good to be humble in your loss as well, so you can learn. But that's really the only way to learn, is to take your lumps.
So awesome. Who's
Hey, thanks.
fired up for their listing presentations today, eh?
Yeah, I love listings. They're the best. That's why
Good.
I sort of kind of stick to listings. Yeah.
So good. Thank you so much for
No worries, guys.
sharing.
I know that this is not like a lot of time to be able to cover all this stuff. So if anybody's got any kind of questions in the moment before you go to a listing, you want to shoot something at me, go for it. I'm a good soundboard too. So yeah, we can kind of do some research on your client together before you go into there, give you more confidence to get in there and kick some butt.
So good. Does anyone have any questions before we all go and make incredible things happen? Daniel, go for it.
Yeah, the listing presentation, the property presentation, do you leave it with them with all of your IP, all of your information? And if they go with somebody else, do you ask for it back?
No,
Okay.
it's theirs. I leave this is my collateral.
Yeah.
So this is tangible. This is worth money. I'm leaving this with you because I know I'm that good. You're not going to go with anybody else. And they're going to be able to put this side by side with somebody else's printouts of MLS. So.
Okay. You're not concerned about giving another agent the exact plan for their next listing agent appointment?
Sure. I'll give it to them. If they call me up, I'll just give it to them. If they wanted to do it, they would have done it by now. Anything I do here is readily available online. So it's not like, it's a secret. I've just put some work into it, personalized it, and I've been, perfecting it ever since. It's never going to be perfect. It's just, I'm always going to keep adding stuff to it. Actually, this is one of our older ones. We've kind of improved a lot on it. We're kind of got that blue theme going on now, but it's sort of something where I love to share. I think if you have that sort of abundance mindset and just give out everything, people appreciate that, and you put good in the world and it comes back at you.
Good job, my friend.
Collaboration is the new currency of success, right?
You got it.
This is why we do these Friday feature calls. It's so good. Perfect. Well, we're so appreciative of you gifting us your time this morning and your knowledge.
No worries. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. This was fantastic. And everyone, have an amazing day. Make great things happen, and we'll see you next time.
See you, friends.